Yeah, hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's international webinar, where we will be discussing the theme of addressing discrimination and inequality in South Asia. My name is Furqan Ahmed, and I have the honor to serve as your moderator for this session today on behalf of South Asia Research Institute for Minorities, SARIM. And I will warmly welcome you to this discourse, specifically to our distinguished speakers, participants, and attendees joining us from different parts of South Asia and world. For those who are joining us for the first time ever, I'll be taking few minutes to introduce SARIM. SARIM is committed to defending the rights of minority communities across South Asia by highlighting the systematic challenges they face. And we do these activities by conducting research. We are truly honored to release a couple of our volumes of our South Asia Journal for Minorities. We do conduct dialogue and advocacy like these, where we aim to promote inclusive societies where equality and dignity are upheld for all. And today's webinar is purposefully designed in a way where we would be creating a space for meaningful discussion and actionable insights. If we look at what is going on in terms of discrimination in South Asia, which remains a deep-rooted and multifaceted issue, mostly affecting religious, ethnic, caste-based, gender-based, and indigenous communities. We do have all the legal protections. We do know that despite legal protections in many countries, there continues to be a gap between policy and lived realities. The aim of this webinar is to highlight systematic inequalities, amplify marginalized voices, explore pathways towards inclusion and justice. We would be encouraging dialogue between researchers, activists, and civil societies. So I would be once again extending my gratitude to Harshul Singh and Subham for their valuable time. Harsh, I truly had the honor and privilege of working under Harshul Singh's supervision during our tenure at International Association of Political Science Students. He is also an early career researcher. He writes on the theme of education and specifically caste-based discrimination perpetrated against ethnic and religious minorities. He is also a graduate of SOAS, University of London. Thank you so much, Harshul, for joining us at this very significant discourse. So to begin our discussion, I would be inviting you to come first to share your insights on, as I said, systematic discrimination and structural inequalities in education and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Furqan. Thank you for having me here today. And I think we have started on a very better note in sense of Dalit History Month, and very critical and very important at the same point. And I think, the context of things globally and in the wider South Asian sense, this is the kind of engagement that we need more than ever, especially coming together in context of Zero Discrimination Day. It certainly does not become something, any ceremonial or distant for us in our capacities and positionality. Talk about discrimination and inequality and our helplessness to hold things accountable because being in such a critical space for ourselves also. You see, for the larger South Asia, like or the Indian subcontinent, this is also very true, how these areas and spaces have been formed around inequality, and it is an uneven terrain for a fact. And that is why this session, when you talk about addressing inequality and discrimination, sits close to us. I emphasize particularly my own life and journey, and the personal injury and the bias tendencies around us. And therefore, talking about this also becomes to talk about a lived and livid realities, how angry and how agitated they are also. And at the same time, also talking and focusing upon, ironical enough to sound, about the fragile hope and our utopian imagination to think that, things can be better in tomorrow's alternative future. I particularly, speak in context of caste and around casted world. That's how I also identify myself as a Dalit individual, and I speak and locate myself in this label and understanding. And oddly and ironical enough, our marginalized and minoritized bodies get start organizing or is being organized, the moment we are born into in certain community, and later it's only become, gradually more compounded by, the aspect of gender, class, generational access to education. And this keeps on organizing how equally unequal we are. And tragic and sad enough, these identities sound, or, they may seem or appear so. These are something that we are born into and born with. And therefore, inferiority becomes an inheritance in all its capacity and possibilities. And you see, a younger cell did not had any understanding of how these social and structural differences work, on how they perform, how they determine and tell for us for the better future of us, the realities for us, the surrounding for us. And it's only in the imposed or the policing senses, by the hegemony, that we are told and we are casted into their idea, that their idea of we are weak, we are someone below them, and we are casted into their realities in an imposed sense. And for me particularly, and I also often ask, how a young psyche at that point, but mine or others, and similarly from DB and Muslim and LGBTQI community, would make sense of any such humiliating and such unequal and unequal experiences. And that's why I said earlier, how hope is a fragile world in South Asian senses, because no one deserves to be made or casted as inferior. And of course, see, for ourselves today, it's me, you, and Shubham sharing these spaces. Of course, we are beautiful beings, and we have a lot of rational temperament. We are intellectually charged in our own capacities, and it becomes an insurgent reckoning in its own self. And just because and being born into a certain community that are labeled as such, we are treated differently, we are seen differently and interacted differently. We are othered, then we are discriminated against and made unequal. And how odd and when I say livid, how angry these and severe and violent these realities be. These are truth, for the larger set of communities of in the larger South Asian world, the diasporic South Asia, or the Indian subcontinent particularly. And therefore, before coming today, of course, we had a shared title for the session, addressing inequality and discrimination. But I was still pondering about it, and I hoped, and I continue to hope that our time and our circumstances allow us to talk and signpost, who makes us unequal. We are addressing inequality, we're addressing discrimination, but I think most importantly also the fact that who is making us unequal, most importantly, right? I think more than that, let's address that also at some point. Maybe our, when I say maybe when our circumstances allow us to do so, right? And I say this because, my own work is very close to researching and studying structural inequality in larger capacity. And I do so by, studying student life, university spaces, and, how students navigate the difficult social worlds, as they move across to academic institutions and building a future for themselves. And one thing university reveals here very quickly is this naturalized sentiment of inequality stemming from hierarchy. That is a very peculiar thing here. You see how then this idea of sustained discrimination became so polished. This inequality is so sophisticatedly packaged in such a liberal language. It normalizes itself as something being very procedural, very inevitable, and establishes itself into what Ambedkar refers itself, graded structures, of our society, and much visible, much visible in how our student bodies are organized in university and academic institutions, which section of the community occupies how much space, who heads these from pedagogic engagements to the administrative positions, and who occupy these spaces also largely. So I think when addressing inequality and discrimination, I think it's not only fair to romanticize the marginalized body. Why does Dalit, Bahus, and Adivasi and Muslims, and other communities only treated unfairly, and still has to respond for its own unfairness. I think that is why it is also very critical and very important for us to also talk about who makes us unequal, who makes this idea of inequality so sustained just to benefit one's own status quo and benefited privilege. And our institutions, our social institutions, our lives, and in everydayness becomes a site where we see how these things, this phenomenology of these things are processed. This psyche of difference and hate is being developed, particularly through dominant groups, in my case, dominant caste, who maintain this inequality and discrimination and sustain this system, sustain this hierarchy because it benefits them on someone's cost. And that is why, for many of our DB and minority bodies, campus spaces or these social institutions never becomes a learning space. It's a space of calibration, because these our bodies are constantly reminded, how to enter a room, how to put ourselves, how to speak without even being misread, or how to address the savanna discomfort, when it addresses itself something as neutrality. And more severe, how to, overcome or encompass, this evaluation, the gaze of such eyes which you judge you, which ask for you vowing your own oneself, coming from the very Brahminical assumption about merit, conduct, brilliance, an idea of their own evaluations, and that is why, I keep returning to the fact that, who is making us unequal, because largely in our own larger South Asian senses, again, then inequality is never really an event, never something very isolated. It is itself a very larger climate, something very naturalized and very made inevitable also, and entrenched so well in the society. And it becomes more urgent. It becomes more, very urgent, and something, to very timely address. I think that's what I hope can do in the end of the session today also, by through our conversation, to talk about, the things that are happening across India, across the subcontinent, across the whole wider South Asia, also in the diasporic senses and spaces. The idea of this caste consciousness, this hierarchical consciousness, that has acquired a very sharper, a very critical public confidence. It travels so quickly and quietly through language of civic sense, civility, theatrics, idea of cultural performance and being national, to take pride in your caste, to take pride in your oppressor's nature. And I think caste, or any hierarchical, or any, such hierarchical imposition really needs any blunt declaration every time, because it equally survives, the rhetoric of reassurance that, hegemony has gone away, the colonial hangover of hierarchy has been dissolved, and, the benefit, but, still at the same point, how benefited these communities, who sustain this hierarchy, who sustain this ladder, who sustain, these systems, continue to benefit from these things remain fully intact. And that is one of the very clear ways, how you and I see Brahminical power in its very modern public language being enhanced or advanced in a certain sense, and what also later in a very severe sense becomes an Hindutva effect for the larger senses. We saw this, we very clearly saw this in the early 2026 January, when for our particular India case, we had UGC equity guidelines and bill equity act to be formulated and rolled out. But it was addressing the problem of caste discrimination, which has gone up to 118%, right, and since the last census and everything. And it was all meant to talk about sustained pressure in higher education. But how quickly the very bill, the very regulations were taken aback from being formulated, and never made into realization. And this is also what we saw in the Rohit Vemula bill, again, aimed at addressing the sustained caste discrimination in campuses through decades and decades. How students, marginal students, minority students, are made to scum their own lives. But how all those things were hindered, to become anything formal. The amount of moral panic that we saw, and also are currently seeing, for the trans bill that's happening here, the amount of severity that we are seeing, it says a lot about the sequence, the pattern, of these processes. That, even when any limited attempts were made to name and locate, just to name and locate this inequality and discriminatory practices, for us caste, a moral panic of this dominant group, and becomes so clearly evident. And because it is in these processes of name and locating, addressing this inequality and discrimination, that the inequality will be clearly named. The system will be exposed to this theatrics, right? The system will be exposed, how it functions on the cost of someone else, how on someone's oppression it thrives on, and it becomes harder for it to sustain in the longer run. And that's why we see so much of counterculture protest against making things equal. So, and again, that just propels us back to think about who is making us unequal and why does so, right? Addressing inequality, discrimination as just one onset, how we can move forward toward a better future, imagining better policies, better inclusive spaces. But again, I think why the greater question should for us also is then why someone makes us unequal. And I think bringing them into conversation, holding them also accountable, is also very important beyond the idea of addressing and addressability. For me, I someone take a lot of faith in Ambedkar works and Ambedkarite readings, and this is where minutely in small possibility the idea of graded inequality comes in. One of the clearest way how you can read caste, and how is inequality, social order arranges our humiliation and distances all at once. And that is why in maybe in one instance, the idea of inequality survives, because it distributes injury unevenly, and fragments possibility of solidarity, if we are allowed to have a solidarity and accountability at all. Because the caste consciousness has trained people, to look upwards with reverence in the order, to look sideways with anxiety and look downwards with the idea of contempt, and inferiority to the communities below us. And this is the whole thing in the vibe of it. When I say for us, it's very lived and livid, and how it becomes our inferior inheritance also. This is how caste structure has endured and continues to endure also, right? And that's why I think addressing inequality is something that we all are doing. We all have romanticized also at a certain point, and also well spoken about. But I think more or largely, it's very important, again and again. And I keep find myself returning to this prior question, who keeps producing this inequality, who keeps laundering into, this is the civility, common sense, civic sense, national pride, and taking this staunchness into that this is this normalization of a South Asian culture to take pride in your hierarchical and oppressor's identity. And of course, I think in the end of the day, this should be a shared conversation, with every side of the coin, with every side of the community on the table. Why only DBA bodies are meant to annihilate and address this question of inequality? I think the other side also has similar responsibility and morality to answer these questions and things. And I think maybe if we are to get into such a conversation, maybe if we are to hold such a dialogue, I think maybe we can find ourselves in a better place. Probably solidarity and allyship, maybe realizing allyship for the first time, naming and locating it. And I think that might start for the first account of understanding how to address inequality in all its presence and its aspect. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll leave on that note.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harshul, for uh, reiterating. I mean, I would say I'm purposefully using this word, like reiterating these issues, highlighting these inequalities, and then also it comes to a question. I mean, whether or not are they even ready to accept that they are doing it, right? The question remains the same, right? Uh, I was also going through a research where I found a German scholar who is closely working on inequalities and caste-based discrimination, dehumanization, or perhaps decolonization of caste lex or terminologies are being used to discriminate, or which has like deeper connotation when it comes to discrimination, when it comes to dehumanize minorities. So you could see, I mean, our 500 words mean a lot in terms of using different kinds of, as you said, like who is doing it, why we are doing it. Is the question of minoritization. I mean, we are as we are progressing towards more progressive world, we are continue to explore new terminologies like minoritization, dehumanization, and the weaponization of these laws, right?
Very
The
true.
question remains the same. Would they be agreed to come to the common points to discuss that? Okay, we are uh, one of those section of the society which harmed you, right? The question remains the same. I mean, are they integral? Are they like sincere enough to even confess that? So, so thank you so much, Harshul, for bringing in such an insightful discussion on the theme today. So I will be quickly moving to our another guest, who's a young and exuberant Mr. Subham Dora, who has been addressing these structural inequalities with a nuanced approach. Uh, he's a rapper. He's also
Mhm.
pursuing. He's almost like about to pursue his master's in philosophy and social sciences. And to begin with, I would be requesting him to first start with few rhymes, like how do you address these inequalities, and like how you go about it. So over to you.
So, first of all, Furqan, thank you for giving me this space. Am I audible enough, right? So, yeah, thank you for giving me this space to speak on the topic of discrimination. And yeah, so first of all, to answer your question, I agree with Harshul when he says that when we are young, we are very immune to these invisible forces that make us very much discriminated in the first place. And myself, coming from a place called Kalahandi, which is a district in Odisha, and that space is very much populated by tribal and Dalit people. Okay, so like it is a heavily populated area, and you don't see the forces that discriminate you directly, because in your environment, in your immediate environment, you see your own community people, right? And I have seen, I've been living with my for a short time. I have lived with my parents, and my mother is a teacher in STSC, uh, state government primary schools. And from there, I've interacted with people who come from diverse STSC backgrounds. And also, given my community, it is a displaced community from Andhra Pradesh. It's been generationally displaced community. So my community is a bit fragmented. It's a popular misconception that a tribal community live together, but my community fragmented within various districts, right? So to form a bond with communities from other Adivasis and Dalit communities, and to find a solidarity ground, relational ground with them, was a very young experience for me. And also, and to find a common uh, adversary, uh, it is very much invisible to you, the invisible barrier that makes you question that why you are so much मतलब बहुत ही पीछे हो, why you are so much excluded from educational spaces, and particularly in the north side, in the Delhi and all, because those spaces are very much inaccessible for us. And if we stay in those areas, in the areas like Odisha, and which are very much far away places from capital, so we stay in those places only. We don't get much opportunities to explore our own opportunities in faraway places. So this makes us structurally rooted in some place, and also makes us wonder ki even if we are displaced among those places, we are still in some way exploited through various invisible forces, like various corporate forces, and various Brahminical forces that surround you in the name of in the name of nationalism. And also, I'd like to say there are many ethnic tensions that go on. If we speak in the context of South Asia, so there are many ethnic tensions that is going on around South Asia. Like if you see Rohingya massacre in Myanmar, and also there are many Muslim minorities massacre which is going on in China, and in India we see there are various persecution of Adivasis and Dalits, and this that makes us wonder that how can we create a shared space of solidarity with those people, because those people who also face the similar level of persecution, they have other contextual differences from us, but still they are discriminated in the same models by the same hierarchical system, as said by Herschel, ki the Brahminical hierarchical system, which is conjoined by the neoliberal capitalistic framework, which is very much a foreign idea. Development is very much foreign idea for us. If we say, okay, we are going to develop you people, if those various people from Australia and England and USA come from faraway places in our areas, small areas, and they say we are going to develop you people. How they are going to develop? They say by giving you by giving you employment. So what employment do you give? Giving 20,000 per month, and they are hoping ki okay, we will do jobs, we will make them work for 10 or 14 hours in the factories. There are various factories, aluminum factories, which are set up in my area. Okay, like Niyamgiri, there's a hill called Niyamgiri, and it is a very sacred place for a particular PVTZ, particularly vulnerable tribal groups, called Dongriya Kond. Kond is a tribe, and those are also various, divided into various Konds, like Kond, like Dongriya Kond. Dongriya means hill, the people who live in the hill, and Niyamgiri is the place for them. So the Australian people, they did a partnership with Odisha government to form a Vedant company since 2003, and they are trying to extract bauxite from that company. And extracting bauxite comes at the cost of losing livelihood of the minority people who live there, Dongriya Kond people who live there, and also along with that there are Kutia Kond also who live in the hill steps of those Vedant, sorry, hill steps of that hill, and they also get affected because their forests are getting cut down from the hill to the down the hills. And this also, and also I used to live in Lanjigarh, so Vedant company and the Niyamgiri Pahad, the hill is located in Lanjigarh, and my mother used to work there for 10 years, and I have lived my childhood there only. And it's a very surreal thing that even if our place is very heavily populated by tribal, still you get discriminated. The space is not accessible to you, because I used to go to a school nearby, and whenever I used to go on the school bus, I used to go through Niyamgiri Hill also. So I used to wonder, and also there are many friends from Niyamgiri Hill who used to study with me. And whenever my bus used to stop, and I used to see the total, matlab, you can view the total hill, okay, from that bus, inside from the bus only. And I used to wonder how the beautiful space it is, and how, and also there were many protests that were those were going on from early in the morning. From early in the morning, people used to go up in with the placards and all, and they used to in front of, so near the Niyamgiri field there used to be a factory. Okay, so near the factory they used to hold protest ki stop the bauxite mining process and all. So we as a school students, we used to see that from the early age. So the idea of resistance was very much ingrained in us, but the awareness was not being made ki who is making you slave to this system, who is making you indoctrinated to this system. Those were not fairly made in education camps, because the teachers themselves were from the Brahminical forces, who used to teach us in a very so-called egalitarian way. And yeah, and so and I used to go to a school which was very much it was a school which was it was inside a very, you can tell it was a colony of itself, Vedant colony of itself, and there was the school. And and in those schools, people who used to come from engineers, who used to come from faraway places, they lived in very various big spacious bungalows, and he used to live very in a modern way, and their way of living was very much different than our way of living. Okay, I used to live in a very those there were quarters that were given to us, and in those quarters we used to live, and their equipments, the technological equipments that they used to live, and they used to use in their everyday life, the English that they spoke, and from their way of livelihood was very much alien to me. So I used to feel very inferior to them. In fact, I used to, whenever I used to participate in those competitions, okay, I used to feel okay, they are going to use various terms, they used to come with various PPTs. Okay, PPTs was very much a alien idea to me. They make some and also they had internet access with them also from earlier, so they used to borrow the images from the advertisements that used to be shown in the televisions. They used to borrow those images, and they used to paste in their PPTs. So I used to wonder ki, okay, these are the photos that I used to see in the advertisements, how could they access those pictures from the internet? What is internet? So it was very much alien idea to me. So I was like, okay, I am different, they are different. So the idea of difference, that came from that idea of experience with them. And also one time when I was in my primary school only, when I was leaving my home, Lanjigarh, because my mother got transferred to another place. So with a friend, I went to another friend who used to live in that urban colony, and they used to make ice cream at home and various modern equipment. So I used to wonder how they can make ice cream. I used to wait for, whenever I used to live in my space, there used to come a ice cream seller used to come with a ice cream thela. Okay, the 2 rupees 3 rupees ice cream with a stick. That was my idea of ice cream. My idea was ice cream was not ki they would make so much with various flavors, vanilla, butterscotch, chocolate, and all. So the when you, and also with all the access like badminton, basketball, tennis, those were the spaces that was given to them. I used to play Well, first time I just played for 5 minutes. I played basketball at that time for 5 minutes, and I was very young child. I didn't know how to play, and those were very big guys who were playing. So though playing with them in 5 minutes, it showed me another level of, difference, and another level of alienship that I encountered. And also in some way I also tried to aspire for that level of living, that level of lifestyle. I used to aspire ki okay, I also want to play basketball. I also want to eat different types of ice cream. So, and that aspiration is not taught to you, because if they teach aspiration to you, then you'd also compete with them, right? So they don't teach you as competition. You get the idea of competition from the idea of engaging with them. So that made me wonder ki, okay, I should go to spaces like Delhi and or to other spaces to to engage with that lifestyle. And when I came here, and I came to know ki very less people from my communities and also from Adivasis and Dalit communities have come and shared the space as I am. And in some way, I also feel like in some way I'm also privileged ki okay, I was able to send by my parents to study here, and there are also brothers and sisters who are not able to access the lifestyle that I am doing. And also in some way, if you are engaging in this lifestyle, it is very much different than Adivasi lifestyle. Okay, so the concept of Adivasi autonomy, ki we will live with whatever the nature provides to us, it is very different than I am engaging with. Here we are consuming consumer products, okay, which is very much alien to us. So the the identity that I used to have, it is being very much converted into neoliberal. And also the changing identity that uh, we go through, the people who are from vulnerable communities, they go through. It is also very much ironical. From the uh, younger age, we see various Banwasi camps by the RSS groups, which are being spread across rural areas to integrate Adivasis people, to like totally distort the idea of what it means to be indigenous. Okay, they say indigenous. It doesn't. Adivasi is very much a political term. Okay, Adivasi is very much political term to fight against the hierarchy that is spread by the caste system. So, but the Vanvasi system, it is very much a vague term which wants to indoctrinate under the Adivasi caste, under the caste system, and that Vanvasi thing is going to it's the larger motive is to convert the Adivasis into OBCs. So if they convert it to OBCs, then OBC actually some parts of OBCs they don't fit into caste system. There are various OBC caste communities and all who don't exactly fit into caste system, but they come into general. But there are also various OBCs in my area who are indigenous Adivasi indigenous people who are registered as OBCs, who are newly being registered as OBCs because they want to integrate the idea of Adivasi तो है ही नहीं. They want to do away with the idea of Adivasi itself. So the Vanvasi wala term is very much they want it is an informal term which they are introducing to integrate Adivasi communities. And also the problem with caste system is that it has integrated into the various indigenous spaces also. So there is a community called Gond community. So the Gond community they tell ki we are superior communities, we are superior tribals. They are also tribals, but the idea of hierarchy it is transported into the indigenous communities also, which is very much surreal to see, because the idea of indigenous is itself a kind of egalitarian idea of shared solidarity, of shared spaces with people, of with to do away with the hierarchy itself. But if the Gond they themselves said ki we are superior, like, okay, Gond don't touch the water of other Adivasis groups like Dongria Kond. Kond, and also the region also comes into a play. The people who live in the hilltops, they are the most discriminated people than the people who live in under the hills. So the concept of region also came. So Gaunt people don't drink water from Dongria Kond. Okay, so the idea of the untouchability also comes from that. It is also learned from other Brahminical communities, and also in our areas, OBCs communities. They are also very untouchables in that. They will get happily discriminated by the Brahminical forces, but they won't. want to get touched with other STs and SCs communities. So it is a very surreal thing to see. And and also there are various mining groups that is and they are going they are displacing people from one place to another, the people who are various matlab very vulnerable caste, and also the forest rangers. They like due to the forest rights acts in 2006. Okay, the autonomy was the official autonomy was given to Adivasi people, but still the forest rangers, who are the official spokesperson of we can say official spokesperson of government, they are exploiting wood. They sell wood in black, so they exploit our forest only for their own. And those forest rangers are also from higher caste. So very less spaces are given to due to the reservations to STC communities. Those are very less in numbers, but the whole framework is very Brahmanical in framework. So they give opportunities for them to sell in black those the wood, the forest, and also there are various Adivasis groups who fight for like self-assertion, like Niyamgiri Suraksha Samiti. So Niyamgiri Suraksha Samiti, they have been fighting against Niyamgiri project, Niyamgiri Vedanta project since a long time, but they are putting across inside the bars, inside the jails, in the under the terms ki they are Maoist. They are trying to divide India, and Maoism as a concept, as a separatist concept, it is Maoist. It is matlab, indoctrinated by the Brahminical framework also. Ki they other the people who fight, they categorize themselves as Maoist. They categorize themselves as them as a violent group, but they are not violent. They peacefully go and protest in those areas. They peacefully protest with the placards, and they give speech and all. They don't violently attack people. They don't violently attack government people or common people also. And also there are also various groups like Ma Mati Mali Suraksha Manch. Okay, Ma Mati means the concept of Mati means soil. The concept of the idea of soil, which is very much sacred to us, and the idea of soil, the idea of assertion comes from that. And also Karthik Naik and Sunita Pottam, like people who are Adivasi leaders, they are put inside the bars because they have self-asserted themselves. And the Sunita Pottam was the VP of Mool Nivasi Bachao Manch. So the idea of Mool Nivasi, as I said, Mool Nivasi, the idea of, like the idea of ownership is very much indigenous to people. The Brahminical framework wants to do away with that. They want to say, ki, okay, you come under us, but the idea of Mata is of us only. You come under us, but we own the idea of Bharat Mata. So that is very much problematic. And also, if we look in the massacre, there are various massacre that is happening. They say Odisha is very peaceful places. No, it is not a peaceful place. There are various atrocities that go of Adivasis and Dalit people. There are various massacres that are going on from a very long time. Adivasis have been fighting against the Britishers from 1836 due to the land revenue system and all, like Humor Rising. And in 1939, there are various Amko Simko massacre. It was a massacre which was done by the leader was Nirmala Munda in the Simco village in Sundargarh. It's a district in Sundargarh. They fought against the land revenue people from the Brahmin caste. Like there's a Ganjam district who colonized our land. So from a very land, and they did partnership with Britishers, and now they do partnerships with various officials, government bodies. So due to the they take high tax and all that land owning communities and all. So yeah, so that's all I want to speak. A lot to speak, but yeah, and also as Harshul said, ki the important thing that we need to do is create solidarity among other vulnerable groups, and also to have a space for dialogue with other people, so that we are able to know, we are able to relate to other people and find a uniform level of assertion, so that the more number of people, the more vulnerable people, the more number of the more greater strength of fight that we can hold against this Brahminical framework. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shubham, for bringing, I would say, more grounded realities, more livid lived realities from your community, from your parts of where you are living. And you said it right. I mean,
Right.
so they're like multi-layered discrimination backed by the idea of
Right.
neoliberalism, the idea of religious nationalism, and the idea of, as you said, like the concept of the grammatical
Right.
mindset. So, I
Hmm.
mean, Harshal, I would say that basically answers your question, like who is doing it. So you would understand like who you would point out the elephant in the room, right? So it's just the idea of having solidarity, whether it's intercaste solidarity, and I would say whether it's external
Hmm.
solidarity to come up to common points as we are doing it right now. I mean, as always, Sarim is here. Sarim would be always welcoming these voices. And I'm grateful to Aishwarya for time posting Shubham for this insight. And he spoke his heart out. He brought in some of the key points and some of the lived realities of uh, of his communities as well. So, and then I'm once again grateful to both of you, and we will be hoping to once again creating these spaces or recreating these spaces to come to common points. And as we are commemorating the Zero Discrimination Day, and on this very note, I would be very hopeful, and as an academician and as a student of history and past as Harshal has pointed out, some of the loopholes in the education system, from administrative to the lower staff, and from your perspective of how Adivasi people or the people are. I mean, you said it. I mean, under the name of development, a lot of expansionism has been made in your parts of the world, and specifically the son of soil, I would say, have been deeply affected by the idea of neoliberalism. So once again, thank you so much to those who stayed with us, and keep watching our YouTube channel and keep subscribing SARIM. And on this note, I would be concluding this webinar today. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Yeah, it was very nice to be in this panel discussion, and also to share the ideas and also listen to very good ideas and also interact with you. So yeah, it felt very nice to like connect and talk.
Thank you, Furqan. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harshal. See you next time.
Cool. Bye bye. See you
Bye bye.
soon.
Cool. Bye. See you next time.